This is About That Business, hosted by Rom Wills, author, speaker, and entrepreneur. Sit back and enjoy.
Greetings, fam. Today I'm going to talk about my thoughts about the universal basic income. Part 1. I'm going to do this joint in 2 parts, right? First of all, we've heard a lot of talk recently on YouTube, and it's starting to get out in the public about universal basic income. Basically, people call it everything from free money to just a flat payout to people, just for being a citizen. You know, it's just something. I mean, the basic premise is to everyone would get a payment, a monthly payment, just to cover their basic expenses, just their basic stuff, just the stuff they need to live. And there's a lot of back and forth about it. And from my position is this right now. This is my position. I'm still researching it, but I do have a slight lean towards wanting to see it happen. And that's one thing I want to do in this first part of this series, a 2-part series, right? To say, you know, what my thoughts are and where it could possibly go and why it's probably needed. That's the main thing. Why it's needed. Why it may be needed. I'm going to say may. Because like I said, I'm still researching. There's a lot of thoughts I have on it. One of the things I haven't been able to research, but that'll come in the next few weeks or months, however long it takes, is, all right, you want to give all these people a monthly stipend. How are we going to pay for it? See, that's the part. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'm not 100% for this yet. And I have to look at a bunch of things. Okay, how would taxes rise? How would businesses feel about it? You know, would myself with a business, would I be taxed extra? You know, as an individual, would I be taxed extra? You know, I've seen stuff of like having like 50% income tax, right? I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, so it's just like, you know, and for the record, many billionaires are for it. But I'm going to get into why many business owners would be for a universal basic income. Like, one of the first things to consider is the rapid job loss, despite what everyone is saying. I mean, we got to face that. You know, we got to face things like the retail apocalypse, you know, the coming of automation. I mean, even white collar jobs are starting to be automated now. Now, faithful followers of this channel know I'm just saying create a new industry. And actually, universal basic income can help do that. It can actually help do that, but that'll be in the next part. But, you know, and that's always going to be my position. Let's just create new industries. But the problem with that is that requires an innovator. The government really doesn't create jobs. It just creates the conditions for things to happen, such as with incentives, maybe small business loans, things of that nature, right? But it still comes up to an individual. And here's the problem, or a group of individuals, like actually going out there and do something. And then it actually counts. It depends on the people. It's supply and demand. It's really the people who create jobs, because the people have needs that need to be satisfied. For example, in the skateboarding industry, skateboarders need certain things. They got certain desires. They want to have certain clothes, certain shoes to wear while skateboarding. Maybe some, depending on what type. If they at skateboarding parks, some of them want protective equipment. You know, they want actual skateboards. So that creates a demand for it. And then businesses come up to supply them. And that's in everything. So it's going to depend on what the people want, whether it's created, and then someone with the foresight to actually create and supply that demand, right? So it's a lot into it. I mean, it's one thing for me to say, hey, create new industries, but it's another thing for it to actually happen. And the thing is, we'll see. I'm still even though I'm leaning towards the universal income, and I'm just saying leaning, like just slightly, ain't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start waving the flag. It's still, yeah, let's still go out there, get that money, create something. Now, people are talking about, you get a lot of people saying that's socialism, and that shouldn't happen. That's actually the biggest argument, that's socialism. But check it out. Let's be real. Okay, we already have welfare. We already know the problems there, and that's really what a lot of people base it on, right? But the thing about welfare, it is supposed to be a temporary thing. And I've known a couple of people who've received welfare or received some type of benefits who they did it during temporary downturns. And, they got it, they got back on their feet, then they let it go. So it's already, you got some level of it out there anyway, if you really think about it, if you want to be real. And I actually knew this young lady who didn't work at all, but she knew how to get every penny that the government offered. She actually explained it. She was like, oh yeah, just call this, you got to call this. I mean, they don't put it out there for you. But someone who really wants some money, they can make a lot of money. So they're already doing it to a limited extent. Also, supplemental social security. There's a lot of people out there because of some type of disability that limits how they work or can work, actually get SSI. A lot of disabled people, you got, it's really tough for someone who might be wheelchair bound or might have some developmental disability or some neurological disability. I really don't like that. I'm using that for a reference. I don't like the term disability, but, or they have some type of social anxiety. I actually know people right now. There's somebody I can go outside my place, and if I walk half a block or so, I have a friend who, she has some social anxiety, and she's receiving a level of SSI, but she also works too. But the SSI is out there, and funny with this unemployment, all of a sudden people were trying to find something wrong with them. And then there's a lot of underage children who actually, they don't get welfare, but because of different disabilities, like they might be on the autism spectrum, their parents actually get money for them. So we already paying something. And then there's also the EIC, the Earned Income Credit. Now that's only paid around tax time, and it's supposed to be a refund, but let's be real. If someone's making like $15,000 a year, just barely above minimum wage in some places, right? And then they have a couple kids. There's a couple, they have a couple children. And then, they get the EIC, and they can get about $6,000, $8,000 back. That's not a refund. EIC is not a refund. They just giving you money. Because that couple that's paid, I'll make it a little bit better. Their combined income is $20,000 a year. They didn't pay that much in tax anyway. So they getting a whole lot. That's basically free money. I know I'm very good at doing taxes. I'm very good. I actually thought about, I know people joke that Rom had all these jobs, but I'm actually good at it. There's a lot, government gives away a lot of money during tax time that someone didn't necessarily earn. They call it an earned income credit, but if you got a couple kids, you claim them. And that's actually some people's hustle. They be claiming kids they know ain't theirs. Be claiming they babysit the neighbor's kid one time and claim that kid. Shit. But they giving away money there. Because that's one thing. And then we actually have something in Alaska. They have a fund there that they pay from, the profits of like their oil company there. And, it's happening, and they trying it in different places. And those just on small scales. Now, we still got to look into the math of it and whether it could be done on a large scale on a monthly basis. But that part of it is here. Now, there's two things to consider why universal basic income is coming. I'll start. The first one has to do with a quote of the great Henry Ford. Back in the day, he actually paid his people a little bit higher than the average. It was either $5 a day or $5 a week. Every time I say I need to look that up to be precise, I don't. But yeah, I can look it up, right? And, you know, people questioning why he did that. He said, I need my workers to be able to afford my cars. A lot of business owners afford because they realize with massive unemployment, they don't make any money. That's one thing in business. I don't care what business you're in, you got to have customers and they got to be able to afford your product. That's the main thing. You know, I could charge a couple $1,000 for coaching services. But then how many people can actually afford that? Forget how many actually want that. How many can actually afford that? And I'm serious on this. That's the one thing. If you automate so much, you got massive unemployment out there. That's the one thing. If people are unemployed, they can't pay for your product. So eventually that billionaire is going to lose money. All of a sudden, that money that they paid out for to automate something doesn't make sense, because the whole point of the automation was to be more efficient in producing a product or a service. But if someone doesn't purchase that product or service, that business lose money. Don't think it can't happen. You get billionaires who lose their fortunes. You get companies, billion-dollar companies that once existed that went out. I mean, that's the whole point of the retail apocalypse. People aren't shopping in the stores anymore. You know, people being more frugal. More people unemployed, they don't buy a lot of like unnecessary things. You know, only thing you could probably invest in is toilet paper. And I read something the other day, especially among millennials, they don't use napkins. They'll use paper towels, but they don't use napkins. And if people don't buy it, in fact, the other day I was out looking for some potpourri. You know, because I like my place to smell good. And I said, I don't like using candles because I forget to put them out when I go out. So I was looking for some potpourri to put down, right? I couldn't find any. I was like, what? People ain't buying it. And see, that'll happen. See, one thing, I don't care what the business owners tell you. And some might be honest to say it, but they need basic income out there to make sure they stay paid. Because this economy is based on consuming. But if people can't afford to consume, everything comes to a grinding halt. See, that's the thing people don't understand. That's the one thing in business, everything. You need customers. Paying customers. Now somebody's going to look and say, hey, can I get this for free? Nah. I don't care what you make. If people don't buy it. You know, there's a video game. I'm not going to call it a video game. I think I mentioned this in another video that my son used to play, but then all of a sudden, like, didn't want to play it anymore. You know, we went to a GameStop, right? I can mention GameStop. And I was like, hey, you know, because they usually take back used games and stuff and pieces. I was like, because this particular game had pieces to it, right? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, do y'all still do that? Or do y'all take this? And he was like, no, nobody's buying it. In that particular game, I was in a Toys R Us the other day. Nobody was buying it. And that's the thing. That's the thing. That's one reason why it's likely that universal basic income will come. Whether people like it or not. That's one reason. Right? They need people to have money to spend. And then there's another one really more important, I think. It's even more important than the money to think, right? Just to give a background with me, right? My expertise really ain't relationships. Well, that's not my main one. I have an expertise in relationships, but that's not my main one. You know? I know a lot about business, but that's still not my main one. The thing I got paid the most money for, like I actually employed to do this, was political analysis. I can actually say I've actually had training in political analysis, particularly social movements, social upheavals, revolutionary type movements. I actually had a class in college taught by a well-respected professor, the art of the coup d'etat, the art of revolution. Or it was called Revolution and Development. But yeah, I actually have expertise on how to overthrow a government. Oh, I ain't worried about saying this publicly. The appropriate intelligence agencies already got me listed. Actually, I know I'm safe in some ways, but we won't go there. Anyway, right? There's a bad formula. If you want to overthrow a government, or if you want to start some type of social movement that can rock the foundations, have a critical mass of unemployed, disaffected people who are hungry, who are desperate. That's all you need. Have a group of them. All you need is one charismatic man. And I'm going to say man, it's rare that, a mass of people will follow a woman. I mean, y'all can call it sexism, whatever. It's just a reality for now. And you know what? It could be a woman. Let's just say a charismatic, but realistically, it'd be a charismatic man, right? And I'd have to get into that psychology in another video. But all you need, if you got a group of people, all you need was somebody with a pulpit. And with social media, it's easy it could be a man. All he needs is a camera and the ability to upload videos. And he can get on numerous social media and create a following. And all he needs is a halfway decent plan. A small group of dedicated followers. And that man could overthrow the whole system. That's revolution. That's how revolution starts. When you get a critical mass of people sitting around, and they're desperate, somebody rises to power. You can check any revolutionary movement in history. Nazi Germany. I mean, Germany was defeated, utterly humiliated by World War I. All of a sudden, this little guy come up and he worked it perfectly. All of a sudden, he transformed them into one of the greatest military machines the world has ever seen. But the conditions for that are unemployment. People going hungry. People make a lot of political decisions with their stomachs. And just the right person to come up. In fact, and I'll say this, and I know I'll get flagged, not by some people, by some intelligence agencies, but in fact, I welcome a peer review from anybody who's familiar with that area. Because they know I know what I'm talking about, right? So you either got a revolution, you got that, so you got to deal with that. That disrupts an economy. You got some people, it's bad enough you got some of these anarchist types like just breaking some windows and stuff. That's small scale. You got a whole group of people doing stuff. And then in order to stop that, in order to prevent that, you got to have a large military and paramilitary presence. And that costs a lot of money. The jobs would probably be in these militarized police forces and army. And also whoever makes drones. I mean, you would have, in order to prevent that, you would have a massive police state. And it would be that way even if a revolutionary movement won. The reason why that would be is because the tendency in revolutionary movements, and maybe I need to do a politics channel, is once they get in power and then the people realize, hey, wait, they're not delivering, then that revolutionary movement has to be as oppressive as the regime it replaced. In fact, you can check any place about that. Look at any conditions. I mean, the normal way of changing governments in the world is a coup d'etat. It hasn't changed in years. The normal way. The United States is actually unique. People need to appreciate one thing. It changes governments peacefully every 4 years. But those are two reasons, because one thing with universal basic income, on a cold-blooded tip, it keeps people pacified. And it's actually a genius way. It's easier to pay $1,000, $2,000, whatever to some person just to sit up and do whatever and literally sit on their ass than worry about that same person getting up and agitating and meeting with other people. It's actually a counter-revolutionary action. You basically paying them. It's cheaper than to have to build some surveillance equipment or pay some soldiers. It's actually cheaper. So those are two things. I'm gonna come back with some more thoughts, and it'd be more along the lines, because one thing it hit me yesterday. There are some people out there who want it, and it's not the usual you know, socialist types. Because yeah. Anyway, let me get back with y'all.